My parents cut me off since I didn't meet their expectations. Now they're begging for money to help my sister. I'm 29 now, and my parents and I barely speak. Actually, they barely spoke to me at all for the past 7 years. The split happened right after I told them I wasn't going into a field they approved of. It wasn't because I was lazy or aimless, or whatever they like to say. It was because I just didn't care about the same things they did. To them, the only way to be someone was to go to an Ivy League, pick a big name career, and make a lot of money doing something that would impress their friends. But that wasn't me. I wanted to be a graphic designer. I liked creating things, and I didn't care if that made me seem like a disappointment or a failure. That's what I told them when I was 21. And that's when they cut me off. No more financial support, no visits, no calls. I was basically erased from the family for not following their rules. My sister, Sue, was the opposite. She was the poster child for everything my parents wanted. She got into an Ivy League law program, graduated with top honors, landed a big job at a top firm, and eventually married a guy just as wealthy and ambitious as her. They had a fancy apartment in the city, took luxury vacations, and always had the newest car. Every time she hit a milestone, my parents would make sure everyone knew. Every holiday gathering was about Sue and her achievements. Me? I wasn't even invited to most of them. Meanwhile, I was living a completely different life. After college, I worked a few different gigs, building up experience and trying to scrape together enough for rent and food. I eventually went freelance, took on bigger clients, and started making a name for myself, albeit quietly. I wasn't rich, but I was doing fine, and I was doing it on my own. It wasn't a life of status and wealth, but it was mine, and I was proud of that. For years, I'd reach out to my family here and there, just a text or a call, to say hi or let them know I was doing okay. They'd never respond. I wasn't mad, but it felt like I was a ghost. I stopped trying after a while. If they weren't going to accept me for who I was, I didn't see a point in begging for scraps of attention. Fast forward to earlier this year. Out of nowhere, my mom called me. It was almost shocking to see her name pop up on my phone. For a second, I thought maybe something happened to my dad, but when I picked up, she didn't sound upset. Instead, she was awkwardly cheerful, asking me how I'd been, saying it had been a long time. I didn't really know what to say, so I just listened while she filled me in on family updates that I had no context for. After 5 minutes of small talk, she finally got to the point. Turns out Sue's husband had been involved in some huge financial scandal. Something about a Ponzi scheme or investor fraud. I didn't get the full details because my mom sort of glossed over it. What mattered to her was that Sue's life had completely fallen apart. Her husband's assets were seized. They lost their apartment. And now she was unemployed with nothing but debt and bad press hanging over her head. It was the kind of scandal that had ripped her life out from under her. And now they were calling me because they wanted me to help her get back on her feet. My mom explained that Sue was in a dark place, struggling to move forward, and she thought it would be nice if I could let Sue stay with me for a while until she sorted things out. She just needs a bit of support right now, my mom said, as if the past 7 years hadn't happened. At first, I told her I needed time to think about it, which wasn't the answer she wanted. She got defensive, saying things like family is supposed to help family, and this isn't just about you. I pointed out that family hadn't exactly been their priority when I was struggling, and that maybe they should ask her friends for help instead. My mom didn't like that. She got all tight-lipped, said she was disappointed I couldn't put aside petty grudges, and hung up. But it didn't end there. 2 days later, my dad called, and he went a step further, suggesting that maybe I could offer Sue a job in my field. Now, I'm a freelance designer. I'm not running some big firm that's hiring staff. He made it sound like I owed it to Sue to use my connections to help her rebuild her life. This was all news to me, since they'd never acknowledged that I had any connections until now. I said as calmly as I could that Sue was not my responsibility. My dad didn't like that one bit. He kept saying that Sue was family, that she'd helped me out so much over the years. I pointed out that she'd never actually done anything for me. And in fact, she'd ignored my attempts to stay in touch after they'd all cut me off. He brushed it off like it was beside the point and started telling me that I was being ungrateful. Ungrateful? to the family who'd all but disowned me for not living up to their standards. A week later, they called me again. This time, they wanted something even more absurd. My mom suggested that I temporarily let them manage my finances because it would streamline things. She was talking about it like I was a child, and she wanted me to give them access to my bank account so they could redistribute some of my income to help Sue until she got back on her feet. It'll be more efficient, she said, like she was trying to explain simple math to me. I hung up. I didn't respond to the dozen texts that followed. After everything, they thought they could just swoop back in, dictate how I spent my money, and expect me to fund my sister's recovery. Then came the next twist. Out of nowhere, I started getting texts from family friends and mutual acquaintances saying my parents had reached out to them, worried about my sudden change in behavior. They implied I was going through some sort of crisis and that I'd pushed away my family. One of my friends even forwarded me a message where my mom had said she was deeply concerned about the choices I was making. The tone was as if I'd joined a cult or was spiraling out of control. It was such a bizarre, twisted version of reality. All those years of silence. And now they were acting like they were some concerned, loving family that had no idea why their son had turned away from them. After that, I finally decided to cut off contact. I didn't need this drama, and I wasn't about to let them rewrite history. But then Sue herself reached out. She sent me a long, carefully worded email apologizing for everything, saying she'd had no idea I felt this way, that she thought we were still on good terms. She mentioned that she never realized how the distance between us had affected me, like it had all been some misunderstanding. Then she asked if she could stay with me for a little while. I just need a place to catch my breath, she wrote. She made it sound simple, like we could just pick up where we left off, like she hadn't ignored my existence for years. It was surreal. I remembered how, for years, I've been the one reaching out, trying to keep some sort of connection. I'd invited her to my graduation, texted her updates about my life, and tried to keep her in the loop. She'd never once replied. And now, suddenly, I was supposed to open my door and give her a place to catch her breath. I wrote back, saying that while I was sorry for what she was going through, I didn't think it was a good idea. I didn't see the point in pretending we were close, and I wasn't in a position to be her safety net. After that, things got quiet. I figured my parents had finally taken the hint, and I felt a huge weight lift off me. But then, just a week later, they pulled one final stunt. I got an invitation to what was supposedly a family dinner. It was my dad's idea, a blast attempt to fix things. For whatever reason, I decided to go. I guess a small part of me thought maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. The second I walked in, I realized it wasn't a dinner. It was an ambush. The entire family was there, and they'd all decided it was time to set me straight. My dad led the charge, saying I'd let them down and that it was time to stop holding grudges. They made me sound like some rebellious teenager who needed to be disciplined. When I tried to explain my side, they all acted like they had no idea what I was talking about. They brushed off every point I made. The years of silence, the fact that they cut me off, the way they'd ignored every milestone in my life. They were rewriting history right in front of me. Sue sat there, looking down at her hands, occasionally glancing up but never saying a word. She had this expression like she was somehow the victim in all this. My mom was on the verge of tears, talking about how heartbroken she was that the family had drifted apart, saying things like, "This isn't what I wanted for us." Then came the kicker. My dad, in his usual calm and authoritative voice, said, "You need to grow up and realize that family means sacrifices." He actually said, "You're not living in the real world if you think you can ignore us and go on with your life." According to him, this whole situation was because I was selfish and living in my own little bubble. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd spent years scraping by, working hard for every dollar, while they sat back and acted like I didn't exist. And now they wanted me to put all of that aside and act like we were one big, happy family? At that point, I'd had enough. I got up, looked right at Sue, and said, "Where were you when I was struggling? When I couldn't even afford to keep the lights on some months? When I reached out to you? just hoping for a text back. Where were you? She looked away, like she didn't want to hear it. Then I turned to my parents. I told them that family might mean sacrifices, but it's a two-way street. I told them that I'd been the only one trying for years to keep us together, and they'd push me away at every turn. I reminded them that they were the ones who cut me off when I didn't fit their mold, that they chose Sue over me every single time, and that they'd ignored every accomplishment I'd made because it didn't live up to their standards. My mom started crying, saying, "We just wanted what was best for you." My dad shook his head and said, "You're making this about you." And Sue finally spoke up, saying, "Can't we just move forward?" As if none of it mattered. I realized right then and there that they weren't going to change. They didn't actually care about me. They cared about what I could do for them. They wanted me back in the family fold, but only if it meant I'd play the part they needed me to play. The backup plan, the fixer, the one they could turn to now that their golden child was in trouble. I told them I was done. For real this time. I said that family is supposed to be there for you through thick and thin, not just when it's convenient. I said that they'd made their choices a long time ago, and now I was making mine. I told Sue that while I was sorry for what she was going through, it wasn't my responsibility to fix her life. And then I walked out. I went home that night and blocked their numbers. I unfollowed them on every social media platform and told the friends who'd been there for me what had happened. They were all supportive, reminding me that I didn't know my family anything after the way they treated me. It's been a few months since that night, and I can honestly say I feel lighter. Cutting ties with them was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most freeing. I still think about them sometimes, especially around holidays or when I see other people with their families. But I know that I did everything I could to make things right, and I refuse to be anyone's backup plan. Now I'm living life on my own terms. I'm building a career surrounded by people who actually care about me for who I am, not for what I can do for them. And while part of me will always wish things had been different with my family, I know I made the right choice. I don't know if they'll ever reach out again, and honestly, I don't care. I'm finally done trying to be someone they can accept, and I'm done sacrificing my own happiness to play a part in their lives. This time, I'm putting myself first, and it feels good. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.